Hey guys, welcome back to One Stop Biology. So today we are going to start off the topic of seed and fruit. Remember that we are at the chapter 2 of class 12th NCERT Biology and we are almost finished with the chapter. This is the last video that we are going to make, right? So let's start with the topic of seed. Now, in angiosperms, in the flowering plants, seed is considered as the final product of sexual reproduction, right? So it is basically described as a fertilized ovule. What fertilized ovule? And seeds are formed inside fruits. So a seed basically consists of three parts, one of which is the seed coat. So it has a seed coat or seed coats. It has cotyledon, or if it is dicot, it has two cotyledons, and it has an embryo axis. So it has an embryo axis. Now the cotyledons of the embryo are nothing but simple structures which are generally thick and they are swollen due to the storage of food reserves. So you must have seen in legume plants the cotyledons are thick and swollen, and it's because they store food. Now mature seeds may be either non-albuminous, okay, now or ex-albuminous, okay. So non-albuminous means that seeds have no residual endosperm. So basically in the last video when we were studying endosperm, we saw that either the embryo can completely consume the endosperm, as in the case of pea and groundnut, or the embryo can be not completely consumed and it is later consumed while the seed germinates, right? So the non-albuminous seed have no residual endosperm and it is completely consumed during embryo development. So that is the case in pea and groundnut, right? Now albuminous seeds retain a part of endosperm. So if it is albuminous, they retain a part of endosperm. So basically the endosperm is not completely consumed during embryo development. So that happens in the case of coconut, castor, wheat, maize, and a lot of plants, right? Now, sometimes in some seeds, such as black pepper or beet, the remnants of nucellus, so the nucellus is also persistent, and such persistent nucellus is known as perisperm. Okay, so the integuments of ovules they harden and they form a tough protective seed coat. So basically, when we studied ovules, we studied different layers, protective layers of integuments, right? So these integuments, they later on harden as protective seed coat. Remember that, right? Now, apart from that, the micropyle, which remains as a small pore in the seed coat. So the micropyle is also present as a small pore. And what does this micropyle as a small pore does? So this facilitates entry of oxygen and water into the seed, as in inside the seed during germination. So basically that small pore facilitates germination. Now, as the seed matures, its water content is reduced, okay, and seed becomes relatively dry. So basically, almost 10 to 15% of moisture by mass is gone, that is reduced, and the general metabolic activity of the embryo slows down, right? So either the embryo enters a state of inactivity, which is known as dormancy, or if the environmental conditions are favorable, right? So in that case, they germinate. The seed, the embryo germinates. By favorable condition, we mean that the moisture content is adequate, the oxygen level is adequate, and the temperature is suitable for the seed to germinate, right? So as the ovule matures into seed, the ovary develops into the fruit, right? So here we'll see some diagrams, right? So here in the first diagram, in the very first diagram, these are nothing but structure of seeds, right? So here you can see are nothing but the two cotyledons, okay? And this is the micropyle. Okay. Now in the second diagram of a seed, this outer coating is the seed coat, right? This after that is the endosperm, and inside is the cotyledon. Okay. Now, if you see this diagram, this particular diagram, here you will see that there are hypocotyl and shoot apicotyl. So this is the shoot apical meristem from where the shoot develops, and here this is the hypocotyl, which means root axis. Okay. So this is the root axis, and below that is the root tip. Okay, so we'll see another diagram wherein again this is the seed coat, this is the cotyledon, this is the shoot apical meristem, this is the hypocotyl root axis, this is the root tip. Here you'll see that endosperm is at the tip, right? Now there is another seed wherein now this is basically developing. So this is the pericarp. Inside is the endosperm, scutellum. If you remember from the previous diagram, in the previous video, basically, what is this? Do you remember? Please mention it in the comments. So this basically is the seed of a monocot, right? This is the plumule. Again, the shoot tip. This is the radicle, the root tip, and we have the coleorhiza, which covers the root tip, right? So this basically is a monocot seed, right? These are dicot seeds. This as well is the dicot seed. So here you are seeing nothing but different type of seeds of flowering plants, right? So let's move ahead. So what happens after the seed germinates? We'll see that. Okay. Yes. So as the ovule matures, now the basically the seed matures. As it matures, the water content is reduced, and either the embryo enters into dormancy if the conditions are not favorable, and if the conditions are favorable, it germinates. Now, once the ovule matures into seed, the ovary develops into the fruit. That is transformation of ovules into seed and ovary into fruit, that both these things proceed simultaneously, right? So wall of the ovary that develops into the wall of the fruit, and that is known as pericarp. Okay, so wall of ovary develops into wall of fruit and is known as pericarp. Now fruits, they may be fleshy, as in we see in guava, mango, oranges, or it may be dry as well, as in the case of say mustard or groundnut. Okay, so there are many fruits that have evolved mechanisms for dispersal of seed, right? So in most plants, by the time the fruit develops from the ovary, the other floral parts which are there like calyx and corolla, they degenerate and they fall off, right? But in some species such as apple, strawberry, or cashew, you have seen that the thalamus is attached, and that also contributes to fruit formation, right? So in that cases, where the thalamus contributes to fruit formation. Such fruits are known as false fruits, right? But then most of the fruits they develop from ovary, and such fruits are known as true fruits, right? So in fruits where other floral parts like thalamus contributes to fruit formation are false fruits, and where ovary is developed into a fruit is are basically true fruits, right? So we'll see some diagram of fruits as well. Here you can see that there are false fruits, and these are apple and strawberry. So this part, the fleshy part of apple that you eat, is nothing but the thalamus. Inside is the seed, and here you what you see is the endocarp and mesocarp. Okay, in the same way, the fleshy part of strawberry that we eat are nothing but the thalamus, and outside the outside layer of strawberry that you see is known as a key. Okay, so these are the diagrams of false fruits, right? So what happens is almost in almost in like uh, almost all the species of flowers or monocots or dicots, fruits are result of fertilization, right? After fertilization, that ovary matures into the fruit. But there are some plants where fruits are developed without fertilization, and we saw in the previous videos that that process of fertilization without formation of seed and fruit without fertilization is known as parthenogenesis, right? In the same way, these fruits that develop without fertilization are known as parthenocarpic fruits. They are known as parthenocarpic fruits. So, for example, banana is one such plant wherein there is no fertilization occurring, and without fertilization, the fruit that you see in banana is formed, right? So, this parthenocarpy or parthenogenesis that can also be induced through the application of growth hormones. And what happens that these fruits are seedless. Okay, so we'll see what are the advantages of seeds in angiosperms, right? So the first advantage is that seed formation is dependable, as the reproductive process such as pollination and fertilization are independent of water. So you see that the seed formation that happens is more dependable. And why so? Because in such cases the reproductive process such as pollination and fertilization is not dependent on water, right? Apart from that, seeds also have better adaptive strategies for dispersal and new habitats, and help the species to colonize in other areas as well. So many times what happens is, since these fruits are eatables, right? So many animals depend on this as their source of food, and they carry these fruits here and there. And because seeds are so adaptive to environment, they can basically get moved to different areas, and they grow at different places. So right, so they can be basically dispersed to new habitats, right? Now seed is also, they have sufficient food reserve, so the young seedlings are better nourished until they are capable of photosynthesis on their own. So you see that since they have sufficient food reserves, they basically are independent of different part of the plants, and they are capable of nourishing themselves even if they are not able to do photosynthesis and prepare their own food for some time, right? And the hard seed coat outside the seed provide protection to the young embryo, right? Now they also generate new genetic combinations which leads to variations. There are many advantages of seeds in angiosperm. So basically seed is the basis of our agriculture, right? We use seeds everywhere, whether we are growing grains, whether we are growing fruits, vegetables, everything. For everything we require just few amount of seeds, and the right, say, environmental conditions, right? So there are a lot of ways to grow nowadays, right? So you must have seen that people are growing their own vegetable gardens, and then that too in the form of, smaller pots, as in kitchen gardening or terrace gardening. So basically these seeds, they are very much adaptive to various environment. They are not so, you know fragile, and they are not so sensitive that you cannot grow them everywhere. It's very easy in the form of seed to grow all the plants, and that is why seeds of angiosperms have so many advantages, right? So guys, with this we have completed the seeds and fruits, and we'll see another small topic of apomixis and polyembryony. Okay, so we'll see what this is exactly. So although seeds are the products of fertilization, in few flowering plants, they have what they have done is they have evolved special mechanism to produce seeds, and that too without fertilization, right? So this is basically known as apomixis. Now apomixis is basically nothing but asexual reproduction that mimics sexual reproduction, right? So there are several ways of development of an apomictic seed. Now, in some species, the diploid egg cell is formed without any reduction division, without any division, and that develops into embryo without fertilization, right? So there are various grasses in Asteraceae. In many citrus and, mango varieties, what happens is some of the nuclear cells which surrounds the embryo sac, that starts dividing, okay, and that only protrude into the embryo sac, and that develops into the embryos again without fertilization. Now in such species, what happens, each ovule contains many embryos, okay, and that is known as polyembryony, as in there are many embryos present in each ovule, right? So there is occurrence of more than one embryo in a seed, and that is known as polyembryony, right? Then there are various hybrid varieties of food and vegetable crops that are right now extensively used. We basically use hybrid varieties as well. And why do we do that? We have basically, genetically also modified a lot of crops, which are basically the genetically modified crops. So what happens there is we modify the genes in order to maybe, make it resistant to various weeds, pests, and things like that, and make the overall production of that particular crop more, right, to maximize production. So I hope you would have understood apomixis and polyembryony as well, right? So apomixis is nothing but basically a form of asexual reproduction which mimics sexual reproduction, but in that case the plant produces seed without fertilization. And polyembryony is nothing but occurrence of more than one embryo in a seed. In many plants, what happens is that one embryo can have many seeds because the development is very different, right? So with this, we have finished the second chapter, which is sexual reproduction in flowering plants. In the next video, we are going to start with human reproduction. I hope you understood this chapter very well. Guys, if you have any doubt, please ask it either by commenting on any of the videos of this chapter, or you can also drop a WhatsApp message on the number given in the description. And if you did understood it well, please do not forget to like the video and share it with your friends, as I want more and more students to basically benefit from these videos. Also, do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks, guys. Bye bye.